Right, we're going. Live and around the world. All right, well, greetings everyone. Welcome to our information session on, we've got community funding information session, North Beach Surf Lifing Saving Club redevelopment and the Avon Tāwhito River Corridor Lake Catchibit project. Before we start, would you like to join me in our...
Is your mic on?
No, it wasn't. I forgot to turn it on.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't affect.
Right,
It doesn't.
my mic is on now.
I'm sorry.
No, by heart.
You should.
Well, I do. Right, not that one. Whakataka te hau ki te ru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā ki kina ki uta, kia mā tautanga ki tai, e ia ki ana te whakatira, e tia, e uka, e ahu, tia e mohi. Right, we have apologies for the lateness from Jackie Simons and Kelly Barber. And so our first, apologies for lateness. And also for Celeste. All right, so now we'll move to our first item, which is community funding information. We've got Josh Walton and Miriam Lomax. Well,
Just me.
Just only.
Yeah. Kia ora koutou. Thanks for doing the push button. There you go.
When it's ready.
It's ready. Perfect.
Yeah, ready to go. Just remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Apologies from Marianne. The two of us are kind of splitting the community boards our way around. So I think she's been and visited also Hornby Rickenham so far, and then we'll bounce around the other boards. I guess by way of quick introduction, Josh, I lead the community funding team and predominantly interact with council and the funding schemes that kind of directly go through to them, but also work with the governance team here in terms of supporting them to deliver the board funding that you guys distribute throughout the year. So really, this was an opportunity to provide a bit of an update around all the various funds that council has, which I've included in the attachments, so that when you're meeting with groups, you can, I guess, speak with confidence as to the financial avenues that groups might want to point themselves down, and I'm happy to answer questions about any of those. And then also to give a quick update about the change of platform that we've had, which will potentially look slightly different for community groups in terms of visually, but ostensibly it does the same stuff in terms of it captures applications, staff, we assess them, we present them to you. And you might have seen already, actually, I'm not sure if any reports have come through, the matrices that you see at decision meetings will look more or less the same, hopefully a little prettier. And the real advantages as staff, we have full flexibility to control the questions that we ask now, the data that we capture, and how the information is presented. So if we have any thoughts on, actually, we really want to see this, we really want to amend how things look on the new system, which is what we're really grateful for. We have full flexibility, and it saves council a couple $100,000 each year, moving away from Salesforce, which was the old system. So outside of that, presenting information, we are going to come in the new term with a funding review, and that'll be Marianne and I, and that'll look at a variety of things, but one of the areas will be funding distribution across the city. And so that'll be which model we take for how funds are distributed around the city. Currently, the model is 60% based on population and 40% based on deprivation, which is the deprivation indices 6 through 10. I can talk to that. But the thinking is to come to the boards at the start of the new political term and present actually what model do we want to run with, and then have a good debate around that. And then the other thing to, I guess, communicate is that in the new platform, groups will actually be applying to the board And that's a bit of a change of process in that in the past, groups would just apply to council. And as staff, we would help them work their way, okay, actually, this is a group that sits here, this is a group that sits there. But it was a bit tricky for some groups, and they wouldn't exactly know whether their application was coming to a community board, whether it was coming to council, even which community board it was going to, or sometimes when we did splits, which community board had what division of splits. So it's it's a more transparent way of groups apply to the board that they sit in. Yeah, and we can provide lots of advice around that to them as well. And it's partially a process improvement. It's also partially limitations of the platform. We can't divide applications and move them ourselves because the power sits with the applicant, not with us as staff.
Can you explain how, because, we get like an application when we do our strengthening communities applications, we'll get application from, say, organisation that's split between, South and East Christchurch, and Braden Cashmere Heathcote will have provided 40% of what they asked for, and they want 60% from us. So how's that going to work?
Yeah. So knowing this was going to be a question, we ran a bit of a calculation. If all of the groups in the previous years had applied to the board that had the largest percentage split, how would the numbers have worked out? And you'd say it kind of works out in the wash. A little bit, everything kind of balances out. The actual numbers are Coastal-Burwood-Linwood, this board would be $13,300 better off in terms of the total budget. Other boards would have carried a larger proportion of those kind of groups that kind of meld between the two. The worst off would have been, what do you reckon? But essentially the guidance that we'll be providing is to please apply to the board where the majority of your people come from. And then if you're applying for a physical building, let's say a group is wanting to improve their roof, actually go to the board that's in the area or the building sits in physically. But if it's about the services that a group is providing, then look at where the people are coming from. And then if it's spread across the whole city, we also have a strengthening communities that sits with citywide as well. And that's where those kind of larger groups would come to. So that's pretty much me. I'd included a table of kind of the funds that are available, how because we've got a lot of new environmental funds, how they kind of overlap with each other. And part of what my team does is we try to present a cohesive picture through council. So by all means, if you wanted to ask any questions about.
Do you think this is going to be easier for applicants?
Yes, yeah. And actually we're running a lot of funds through the new system already. The feedback, not entirely unanimous. I think some people find change difficult, but that's fine. But I'd say 90% is more positive for groups. And that's been the feedback we've had so far.
And the accountabilities are easier at the end, aren't they, as well? Because they just have one to fill in rather than having to report back.
Correct, yeah. So not having to provide accountability to multiple boards is just faster. It also takes work away from staff and from governance. We're not assessing groups multiple times for the same application. In governance, it's not multiple boards considering ostensibly the same application. But yeah, no, we've had really good feedback so far on the funds that are running through citywide, and I think your board have started using it for your discretionary response fund. Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions? No further questions. All right.
I guess what I'd say in closing, you're very lucky here in Yanni and Celeste are the chair and deputy chair of the funding committee at council, so, yeah, you get a good say when anything comes up to that council table.
Sounds very biased.
I'll just make a comment.
Yeah,
I just want to say thank you for the diagrams.
Hmm,
I thought they were exceptionally good because it actually is a bit confusing, I think. And even though we're on the committees, sometimes when people approach us giving advice as to which funds, so actually a visual breakdown is really helpful. And I must admit, I did cut and paste it and
it's great.
shared it. I think it's, is it on the website now?
Not yet,
Okay.
but it will be. The other advantage of the new system is when they click, sign into, it's called Smarty Grants. Groups can see every fund that is open from council all in one go. So they can see actually, maybe this is a good fund to fit I'm looking to do, or they can kind of explore the different options.
And just finally, because I noticed not all the funds are on there, will there be a separate one that shows some of the other ones, like the placemaking fund, or is that just too complicated to include the other?
On which one are you referring to?
I'm looking at page 8. We've got the partnership, environmental partnership, I think it's all the environmental funds.
Oh, yes, there's a separate attachment that has the full list with a teal kind of background.
Yeah.
That shows all of council's
Yeah,
funds, yeah.
thank you. It's really good.
Yeah, and that's the trickiness is often we're capturing budgets that are held by parks, some by communities, some by the place partnerships team. So yeah, it's about presenting a cohesive picture. But the great thing is you guys have a fantastic team with Chris and co who serve really well, so.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that update. I just wondered, is there any work being done on because of the Royal Commission report into state care and a number of organisations that we fund around that?
Mm.
Is there any work done around obviously going to the new funding system, but just in terms of the diligence that being done on the organisations that are receiving funding to ensure that they have good processes in place? I mean, I was probably quite surprised that actually when you look at some of the Royal Commission stuff, some of the behaviours are actually quite recent. They're not stuff that happened just in the 50s and 60s and 70s. There's actually stuff that happened in, within the last decade by some of the organisations involved.
Yeah, it's something we, not necessarily about the state care thing, but we talk about the criteria, what we will require, and there's always a balance between the time spent of asking groups too much and how long it takes them to fill out a form, and asking too little and not covering our bases. So we are going to be requiring groups when they're applying for a project that's working with children, that they have an up-to-date children's policy, which is kind of relevant. But we have these discussions with the community development advisors all the time. And
There's only been, so just been a bit county, there's been changes in the last decade or just a bit over to around the requirements for organisations working with children and young people that they're in place now, and so a lot of that vetting has to take place. So I guess it's just knowing that they do have policies in place and that they're doing what's required of them. But we have asked around having some, making sure that we have organisations that are inclusive, both culturally and other ways. So I assume that work's still going on.
I'm not aware of that side of things. What I would say is the other advantage of the new system, I kind of alluded to, we can change the questions in flux. I remember over COVID, just after COVID, we asked a question around paying the living wage because that was relevant for a time. So if there is a rising question that you would like to see addressed through, when we're asking groups about their applications and whether they fit strategically what we want to be doing.
Sorry, is there a time where it's not? I thought there was council policy around the living wage.
Council policy is to pay its employees and the employees of its CCTO's living wage, but it doesn't have a formal stance on whether grants to external groups also needs to be But we have the flexibility now to find out those questions, or any other types of questions if, as a board, you say, actually, this is really important to us strategically.
I guess personally, and not speaking for the board because we haven't had a discussion about it, but I would, but at the very least, we want to give preference to organisations that did pay a minimum wage.
And one of the things that we've been doing as a team, sort of in the lead up for this round's SCF, is asking some of those questions of groups from the last round of SCF around policies for alcohol reduction, gambling, all of those. So we should be able to report that based on who applies for your SCF funding at that meeting. So you've got a broader picture as well.
Yeah, and I guess what I'll say is my role, really, my team's role is to support teams like your community governance team. And really, that'll be your first port of call when you're talking funding. But if there's anything that comes through then that they're like, actually, that's an idea we might want to implement, that's when my team will get tied into it. So, yeah, you've got great support there.
Right.
Might be a bit out of scope, but during the long term, we talked about, so it is not too far out, about adjusting those funds for inflation. Because as we know, if you're going to be paying living wage, it also is going up, which is good, but people getting with funds static. So I know that was kind of parked, I think, during the long-term plan, but something we could potentially revisit anytime.
So your board budget,
Yeah.
Which is the strengthening communities, discretionary response, youth development, etc., is budgeted for a 2% increase year on year, although that is up for debate as part of the annual plan.
Is it?
So good luck.
Oh, okay. What about the metro vision? That's
Every version of the Strengthening Communities Fund, the citywide and all the boards, is scheduled for a 2% increase year on year. Lower than inflation, but it grows a little.
Right. Any more questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, you're right, we have you now?
Yeah.
Yep, because we're missing a presenter for the second item, so.
You've probably seen a couple of iterations of this already. So just a little backstory as to what the sudden flurry of information was through to the board. Council usually hosts a stall at the Richmond Community Gala, and we found that is quite a good place to just showcase the projects that we are doing in the rezone and various other things. So there was a few of us at that stall at the Richmond Community Gala last weekend. And I just wanted to let the board know, first of all, that we would be showing this, just didn't want to speak out of turn, so to speak. So it wasn't part of the actual official engagement. I know somebody had inquired about that, hence the flurry of updates. We want to make sure that you were first to know before we sort of tabled it publicly. So Hannah's with me today, we'll be helping with engagement. So I'll just talk you through the scope of the project, sort of a little bit of the background and how we've got to where we are. We'll leave some time at the end for asking some questions and comments. So, as I say, you may have seen this already, but the Lake Kate Shepherd project, there we go. It's the sector that sits between sort of Anzac Drive, New Brighton Road and the Otakara River, and then it's bounded by the existing sort of residential boundary. Very pertinent, there is a hatched out area that you'll see that's marked trial housing. So I'll address that first of all. That is not part of this project scope, and it's not by any means a council initiative. That came through from the regen plan. So when the consultation happened, some areas were earmarked as trial housing and fringe housing. In order for us to be faithful to what we've been tasked to do, we need to bring that forward. At this stage, it's to be developed by a third party, and due to the fact that we don't have fully functioning co-governance group just yet. It's unlikely to sort of move in the next few years. And in fact, to date, we haven't had much interest from any third parties about developing this land. In fact, I can tell you that it's actually a naturally developing wetland. So whoever chooses to take that on would certainly have to be, it wouldn't be low-cost housing by any means, and there'd be some pretty significant hoops to be jumped through to make that a reality. So watch this space. Right, so this sector or the site includes Bow Park, which is down in the sort of southwest corner. It also includes the regional park, which is sort of along Lake Cape Shepherd and just surrounds. So the regional team, in fact, the team that have developed Travis Wetland have been working in this space for a number of years and have been doing some ecological restoration. So that'll be included and wrapped into this project as well. And then obviously the interior consists of our residential red zone space. We found that this sector suffered quite badly in the earthquakes. It was particularly hit with liquefaction. And in fact, down in the southwest corner, there's been a lot of subsidence sort of around Barker's Lane and Barker's Lane. There's been quite a lot of settlement down in that lower corner. So in 2002, the lake was expanded to include. The lake was expanded as part of the development for the retirement village that was set there before. So the Lake Cape Shepherd retirement village. That area now, so where number one is located, we found that it's actually one of the most valuable inanga spawning habitats in the whole river. So that's very positive, but it also makes it quite a sensitive site ecologically. So our ecologists get quite excited when we propose to do some work on this area. Bow Park is still a very popular community space and one of the most popular recreational spaces in the area. We have been working with clubs quite strongly throughout the process of this project. We tabled this idea last year to the Establishment Co-Gov Committee, and it was at that time was approved and greenlit by them. So that's just a little bit of the concept plan. Sorry. It's a bit of the concept plan. So as you can see, about 70% of the project would make up ecological restoration, which is what that area has been demarcated for in the regen plan. We've included an upgrade of the Bow Park Sports Park. So at the moment, I think there's about 4 touch rugby fields. We're proposing to extend that out to 6, expand the space for the softball. They're actually wanting to use that as a permanent home for softball Canterbury. And then Otatai Rugby, who practice there, will be relocating to Lancaster Park. There's also a New Brighton Cricket Club who use the pitch in summer as well. So most of these sports are summer-oriented sports.
I just want to clarify, you said permanent home for softball. We just approved a big upgrade. Well, we approved the lease for an upgrade of Canterbury softballs. Stuff at Cuthbert's Green.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just surprised to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take that back because, back to them. Because, at the time of consultation, which was late part of last year, the comments were that they'd like to try and make this one of the, or sort of the home of Canterbury softball. So I don't know, maybe they're double dipping. I'll find out though. So 3 sort of summer sports all wanting to use that space. We do find the space gets quite difficult to maintain in winter. There's a lot of subsidence in the area. Even though it's not a bad field, it does get quite soft throughout winter. And you say, well, we play summer sport. Why would winter matter? But we prepare it in winter for the summer sports. So what we're proposing is sort of changing the levels and redeveloping the space, making it a little bit bigger and just better sort of fit for purpose. We've included the proposal for changing rooms, which has come through from the clubs during our conversations with them. as well as things like additional parking space. Obviously, we don't want to take the whole red zone with car parks, but we are aware that if we're upgrading a space, we need to provide parks. So that's been included in there, I think, in a fairly smart, comprehensive way. And then an upgraded playground. So the playground at the moment is sort of heading towards end of life, and we thought that could be included in the scope of this project. We've also included a fitness circuit, so that would sort of go around the outside of the sports field. And we're wanting to sort of open the whole space up a little bit more to just make it a little bit more accessible, tie it into the surrounding neighbourhood, and just let it sit in the landscape a little bit more accessible for residents. Obviously, a lot of work will be done through the ecological restoration zone. So as we go out to engagement, we'll be talking to residents and stakeholders about a few, because it's quite a technical and quite an ecological space. It's there's not a lot of space or a lot of room for input, but there are inputs needed on things like the alignment of paths, what type of playground, what sort of nature play spaces they'd like to see. So there's definitely there's some scope for some good inputs there, I think. The idea is to create this sort of wetland in this corner, which that's the area I was talking about that sort of started subsiding and has got roads that need to be removed. And that is the area that the existing wetland that we have in this concept design is the area that sort of we believe will suffer the most inundation in coming years should we have sea level rise. On this plan included are things like pump tracks. So there's a little pump track near the playground, as well as an off-piste sort of bike path that would run along the pedestrian connection. Key issues on this are coastal inundation and adapting to changing sea levels, the ecological restoration, building on the work that's been done by our regional rangers, and keeping that consistent with what's in the region plan. Obviously, as I mentioned, surface flooding and groundwater, a bit of an issue, so hopefully trying to address that with the way we develop the space. Lack of access and parking, which was mentioned from the sports clubs, and lack of suitable recreational space, which we're really aware of in this side of town. So project scope. So as I've said, upgrades to Bower Park, walking and cycling connections as outlined in the region plan, expanding that natural wetland, which is a common theme throughout the OARC development, is trying to work with nature and work with what water is wanting to do rather than fighting against it. Obviously, building on that native planting and then expanding around Lake Cape Shepherd. As I've said, outside of scope is the trial housing, which we obviously have to show on our plan, but it's not a council initiative at this point. Key milestones will be starting engagement during April, and I'll be helping with that. Hoping to lodge consent in June. Planning to get out to the market this year, with construction starting in February next year. We anticipate about 18 months, 15 to 18 months of construction on this. Budget is coming from ecological restoration budget. The Christchurch Recovery Acceleration Fund, or CRAF, and LTP capital funding make up the majority of that budget. We estimate from previous projects that this will probably be somewhere around the $5.5 million mark for this project. That will include design and construction. It's just some more illustrations of what we envisage the bike track, the wetland ribbons and activity nodes to look like. So wetland ribbons is a concept that our ecologists have come up with. Because this is such an ecologically sensitive area, they like to create these sort of ribbons that almost act as barriers for people running, dogs and bikes and things through. And it sort of naturally guides people out of sensitive spaces, spaces where birds might be nesting or that sort of thing. So we try and do that with the landscape rather than putting physical barriers in as such. Just down at the bottom, you'll see some of the ideas that we have about what the pathways might look like. So some of those connecting paths, just very much a nature-inspired play space. You probably have seen some of this coming through on Avon Park. You know, a lot of natural sort of timbers, reclaimed timbers, rocks, and that sort of thing. That's the idea of the play space. As I said, 6 rugby fields, the cricket pitch in the centre, softball fields expanded, along with all the additional parks down at the bottom, a through road, as well as an upgraded playground and the pump track. The right-hand side, you can see some of the ideas of what we're thinking that playground might look like. You know, what the bike track may look like. Our designers are using what we call a permission to play strategy. So rather than making these really constructed off-the-shelf playgrounds, we're sort of creating these nature-inspired playgrounds, kind of thing kids would have, you know, when I was a child many years ago, that you sort of find in nature, where you could go out and sort of create your own game rather than, you know, you've got this big metal or plastic structure. You've got something that's a little bit more nature-inspired. So we're using this term permission to play, where you make use of, you know, mounds, reclaimed timber, water, and that sort of thing. And we find that it's a better way of doing it.
We get it.
Yeah, you get it? You're on board with that?
Yeah, it's really cool. I really
We're
like it.
working with Louise Van Tongeren on this. So she's working quite closely with our designers. Power Park Play Space, that's what we imagine that could look like. So just remember, this is draft. Yeah, it's still very early stages, so we'll be looking for input from the community and various stakeholders on this. Treaty partnerships. At the moment, it's a fairly complex space and has been sort of the duration of work in the Waitai. So at the moment, what's happened is council has formalised an agreement with Whitiora. So Whitiora at the moment are representing Ngāi and they are the preferred engagement partner for the work in the red zone. So we are working very, very closely with Whitiora on this. In fact, to the point that we're actually presenting all our current projects to them, and they have allocated resources to provide input from very early on, so right through from concept stage. So this is what we've wanted for quite a long time. Staff have sort of been wanting to engage and wanting to work with our partners, but not really had the resources to do that. So it's pretty exciting, and Waitai Shepherd will be one of the first projects to trial that philosophy. So yeah, very exciting, and we expect really good outcomes. And already are starting to see some really good input into projects that we're working on. Stakeholder engagement, this will be Hannah's speciality.
Sure you can hear me. So yes, we're obviously, the team have already had some discussions with sports organisations to inform the development of the sports park, although we're going to look back on something that was raised. We've been trying to look in with the Eco Action Nursery prior to consultation to identify opportunities for in-person engagement, collaboration with them. Might be an opportunity for an on-site meeting or tour, interested parties in the area. As per the timeline, before consultation will run later on this month for around 4 weeks. We'll target the community with emails, on-site signage, flyers to neighbours, social media, so good OARCE newsletter, etc. We'll tier information so that there's lots of pictures for those who, like me, have limited vocab on ecological restoration terms, but we'll give more information for those that want it. And there are places where there's quite a lot of scope for meaningful engagement, particularly around the play spaces and the paths. So we'll be asking for whether we've got our initial plans right, and for ideas from the community who know this area really well. If there's anyone that you as a board would like us to target through consultation to make you comfortable in making a decision on this project, please let us know. Similarly, if you have any insights on what type of tactics that you think would work for this community, then we're always happy to hear that. Have I missed anything off my list? No, feels good.
Cool. Excellent.
Next steps.
Yeah, next steps. So with your blessing, unless there's anything we've missed or you're very unhappy with, we'd like to start community engagement. We do understand that the community needs some proper engagement. The message that's come through from a manager and various people I've talked to is that they don't want to feel like they're being told. So we're aiming for some real meaningful engagement and some input into this. Certainly we'll be being quite thorough with the way we conduct this, and hopefully we are open to advice if we've missed anyone. Following that, we'd like to refine our design based on the feedback received, and then we'll present to you and hopefully formalise what we've got in a way forward and begin to prepare the consents.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Are you able to take some questions then?
Absolutely.
All right, so we've got Alex, Celeste, Joe, Tim.
I need to see the hands go up.
Greg.
By the way.
So just in relation to the housing, I think it's important to note that in the subdivision on the old Freewill school site we did, there was quite a lot of feedback and questions from the community about, why housing can be going here now, when there's going to be a school there. And I think that question literally you might have again in relation to the housing coming up for this project. So I just think it's really important, as part of that consultation, that you discuss the changes and why we can build on that space.
Yeah, I'm very.
It's coming from a former student of the school.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that, and that's question has come up on other sites as well. It can feel like a slap in the face. You've taken land away from residents and now you're putting here. So thanks, we'll definitely address that in a very sensitive and thorough way.
Thank you.
Celeste.
Really cool projects. I particularly like the nature play. I think are they the same thing, nature play and what you.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more formalised
Okay.
around our park, but yeah, the nature play spaces will be along the ecological. So we're trying to get kids involved in ecology, and like if you go to Travis Wetland, you get a good idea of getting kids outside,
Yeah.
seeing the birds, seeing plants, and yeah.
And the fitness, I just think it's a good mix for different ages and stages. So I think that's fantastic. In terms of the consultation, I was just curious, do you think there will be like drop-in sessions, sometimes to look at these great schools, I guess, will be engaged?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
I mean, I haven't chatted to Hannah
Yeah.
officially, but we're thinking possibly at our park, maybe doing a couple there, and so because obviously that is a space where people congregate naturally, and that would be where most of the input would be. But
Yeah. I don't know if there's any school fairs coming up, but it's usually quite a good opportunity to sort of catch people when they're out and about with the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
cool. Look into that.
if we can find anything, we'll send them through and do some
Okay.
opportunities.
Yeah.
That
Great.
fit in your timeline. Thank you.
Right, Joe.
Just following on from that, it might be actually good to have one at QE2 in the
Yeah.
one of those rooms at QE2.
Yeah.
So with the housing part, I know people that have actually bought a section in Sandy Ave, thinking they're going to have a red zone across from them forever. So there's that kind of thing, to have that conversation with those residents, because it's going to be a big thing for them. With the paths going through, I can see where Wattle Drive is at the moment. If we have that future housing, would it be worth retaining Wattle Drive to access that housing?
Potentially, yeah, I can include that.
I
Yeah.
just know when it's come to evacuation of that area before, that area gets really gridlocked and finds it really hard to evacuate.
Yeah.
Whereas if they had that additional exit out of the area, it might be really useful,
Okay,
just in case.
yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
can add that to the design.
And with the consultation, there's a little alleyway that goes from the park through to Barrett Ave, and I'm just thinking it would be really good to keep those residents in that little area
Yeah.
around the alleyway included in their consultation, because
Yeah.
they use that park in
Yeah,
that
of
area
course.
quite a lot. With the parking for the sports ground, a lot of that parking or people that go there park across in the cocaine reserve or cocaine
You're
reserve.
referring to that unofficial, well, that was something, I didn't want to open a whole new can of worms, but it was something we thought about that potentially could include in scope of this project as by
That's what I was
developing.
gonna ask.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, I wasn't sure how you feel about that. Potentially we could extend that. And, you know, obviously we're not going to spend a whole bunch of money putting in asphalt, but we could formalise it and tidy it up. And it could double up as an overflow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, a lot of people use that already,
Anyway,
and it's
yeah.
currently, it gets chocker sometimes,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just tidying it up.
Yeah.
You know, we've actually mentioned it in a couple of
Cool.
APs in the last so many years,
Okay.
so if that could come into the scope, that would be
Yeah,
brilliant.
excellent, yeah. No,
Um,
it's
and
plan
with-
on.
With this whole project through Cape Shepherd, is there gonna be new stop banks built?
Yeah, we are in conversation with our Three Waters team. At the moment, our programs are so, and particularly through this space, we're sort of not in alignment in terms of program timing. So all they've asked is that we leave a potential corridor. So what we've done is sort of said, look, this is where the corridor for future stop banks might be. It could be in 15 years' time, 10 years' time. And we'll make sure that there's no built assets within that space, and there's no major significant fees within there.
Yeah.
So we're future-proofing it for our colleagues. But yeah, no stop banks on this project scope.
Yeah, and with the engaging with the school, it would be really good to get their input on like cycle access from Wattle Drive all the way through Wattle Drive to their school.
Yeah.
That would be the most direct route to take.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be good to have that input. We'd see that as I think what we're trying to do is have a formalised track where people might walk, and, you know, we don't want to be too formal, and then just have that off-piste sort of kind of gentle meandering sort of track where people could go with their little mountain bikes, or kids, you know, from small kids to older kids could sort of ride in that space as well. So yeah, it'd be good to understand where they want that.
Yeah, because even like people going to QE2 and they come from Aranui and go straight, that direct route through with yours.
Yeah,
thank you.
Tim?
Just to follow up on Wattle Drive, are you saying you'd look at opening that back up from your Brighton Road?
let's go back.
Page 74 an hour.
Yep.
Just think about that cost, be more than
Could you
5.5
maybe
million.
click it back on the screen?
Page 74, sorry.
Oh, yes.
That one, I think, Mark.
That one there. That one there. So we're at 857.
Yeah, so currently Wattle Drive, obviously the work on that is not included in the scope, but what's the status of that road? Sorry, I'm not actually up to date.
It's closed.
Closed
Really closed.
and bad repair.
Okay, in bad repair. I can ask the question. I can certainly ask the question. It won't directly form part of this project scope, but certainly we're considering for future development if while housing went ahead. I guess I could include that as a note for something should somebody come forward and decide to want to develop that trial housing area. But as I say, it's going to be you have to be pretty innovative and have quite deep pockets to want to do that space, because it's there's some hurdles to get around there.
Long piles, eh?
Yeah, it's almost halfway back to a natural wetland.
So Lake Cape Shepherd, is that acting as a retention basin as well?
Not intentionally, but it does function that way. The hydraulics of the site, which I'll show you when probably on the next update, you'll see most of the water flow does come sort of from trial housing down towards Lake Hay Shepherd. So we will put some overland flow paths in and sort of be directing water, but it's not intentionally meant to be doing that. So it's not a Three Waters asset, but it probably will function that way.
Yeah, thanks.
Greg?
Have the sports clubs given any indication of what the increase in numbers at big times will be?
They haven't, you know, what clubs can be like, it's all sort of touchy-feely, but I can ask for that.
Just sort of following on what Joe said about the parking, if we look at the add, it looks like about 50 car parks. If that's only covering what the current overflow is, and they're looking to increase numbers with 2 touch rugby grounds, that's quite a large number increase.
Yeah.
Like now is the right time to
do it.
add that in, whether it's on both sides of that driveway as it comes in, there's space there.
Yeah, we can include that as part of the engagement process. I think it's probably sensible things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar question because we've got the sports network plan, but there's no mention of this in it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand like how we've assessed the need for sports and how it fits into the sports network plan.
Okay.
Because it's talking about upgrading Clear Park for cricket, which is relatively.
I thought you might ask that one, Yanni. So I spoke to John, and it's a good question. Yeah, so I chatted to John Furlong, who's my colleague that handles work with Bower Park, and he said it's not been identified as a priority park by any of the RSOs in the first round of submissions for the sports park network plan. So apparently the clubs have not identified it as one of their priorities. So yeah, I think it's due to the types of codes. So he goes on to say it's all summer codes. So touch rugby on Fridays, cricket on Saturdays only, softball Mondays to Thursday training. And that's it.
I guess I just have a concern that we literally will not be able to afford to maintain all these sports fields that are going in the city if we don't have a really clear strategy around it. And we've got QE2, which is I think the top priority.
Yeah.
One of the top priorities. Clear Park, which is going to get an upgrade for cricket. I guess the funding for this is from a different budget. Is that
the construction would be? Yeah.
Where's the sports field money coming from for this?
Well, out of that CRAF and onto, so it's included in the red zone development.
So we can only spend the CRAF money in the red zone. Yes,
yeah, but Bower Park has been included on the regen plan, so it sort of gives us the license to go ahead and develop that as part of the ecological restoration.
I mean, just from my point of view, but I'm not the councillor for this area. Obviously, I've got other areas, but like, you know, Bexley Park, for example, is something that's like just being very slow progress, you know, and
QE2's been slow as well. Yeah.
QE2 has been slow, but there's money on budget for QE2, so it's not a budget issue, whereas Bexley's just been constantly delayed because of funding, and that's right by the red zone. So I guess I would just want some more understanding around the assessment. Also, talking about the Aotearoa Rugby, do we know how many members or teams that they have? And because Lancaster Park at the moment is a really good example where we've got football who's got high demand. My understanding it isn't a big demand for rugby. So moving rugby to Lancaster Park when you've got other demands for football that are higher, that seems kind of counterproductive.
Yeah, I can look into that for you and come back.
And final question, are you building a changing room for the sports?
Not building them as part of the scope. That would have to be funded by the RSOs or sports clubs. We've included it as in our planning.
Just like a toilet block?
Yeah, so there will be a toilet block.
Right.
Included, but yes, sports changing rooms need to be funded by the clubs themselves. So we've included it in our planning just so that, you know, our general arrangement makes allowance for it.
Yeah, I think if you're engaging with the community, it might be quite good just to tease out what facilities are needed for sports. I know, again, we come back to Lancaster Park, it's been criticism that the changing rooms are going to be too small and they're not gender diverse either. So you've basically got a problem that you can't have more than men's sports on at the same time because of the lack of changing rooms.
Okay.
So if this is going to be a sports hub, and you talk about softball as well, it would be really good, I think, to understand what the needs are.
We can
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
intensify our
we can ask some more specifics.
Yeah, at the moment it's been quite cordial, just during the content phase, but yeah, we can definitely intensify that.
So I've asked for the RSA feedback for the sports network plan, but I haven't been provided it, and I've repeatedly requested it to see what the RSAs are saying. If you look at some of the comments on Punawai, there were other clubs and other members in other parts of the city that wanted to have input. So again, just I guess a word of warning when we're consulting on these things is the more transparent we can be about what the priorities are and why. With the sports clubs, not just the RSOs, but the sports clubs, the RSOs and the actual club members.
Yeah.
I think that gets us into a better.
Yeah, and I think for this one, explaining where the funding is coming from, often who cares if you're the community, like you just care about it happening. But for this, I think it'll be important to explain that this is a separate kind of process.
All right, do we have any more questions? No more questions? Well, thank you very much. Oh,
sorry.
This, oh,
I know.
yeah, almost.
I was just wondering about Bexley. So there isn't scope to within the existing.
No, yeah, Bexley Park, I think it's well outside of anything we're doing in the red zone.
Yeah.
The question has been asked internally as well, whether it could be included or should be included, but I think if we go back to the region plan, it's fairly clear that it doesn't sit within that, so.
Okay. That's useful to know. Thank you. See the shame.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. We'll just have a couple of minutes. We'll go through the North Beach Surf Life Saving redevelopment. online. Pardon?
We are.
We are live. Welcome back, everybody. So we have our final item for the information session, the North Beach Surf Living Club, Surf Life Saving Club redevelopment. And we have with us Jason.
Kia ora, I'm Jason from the Crossbeach Council Parks and Recreation. So I'm the Parks and Recreation Planner on this project, and we have Dean.
Kia ora, my name is Dean Warren, Club Captain.
Right. Shoot.
Cool. So just a quick brief history of how long North Beach has been around. Our club was initially started by some club members who lived at the north end of the beach. They used to swim that end, and they sort of got tired of walking the 1 mile to back in the day to the Brighton Club, and so they decided to start a bit of a splinter club, which they established in 1916.
Oh, is it Davies?
I'm not sure if he's that old. Oh, yes, okay. So yeah, established in 1916, so nearly 100 years old. Current building was built in the 1960s. We've obviously had additions to that in the mid-70s and the early 80s, but pretty much hasn't been touched since then. The building was not adversely affected by the earthquakes, but it didn't help with cracking and things like that. We've got exposure to internal reinforcing, which led to the deterioration of the building. We've got a asbestos roof as well. In the last 8 to 10 years, we've gone from a small club of 25 juniors and 32 lifeguards to the current 2025 level of 204 juniors, which is one of the biggest junior clubs in the region, and 74 patrolling lifeguards with a total membership close to 360 people. So it's great. They were originally one of the smallest clubs when I came back into surf lifesaving, and my children started back into it. I've been out of it for 15 odd years, but came back into it with my children, so and really put in the effort of trying to build North Beach back up. So achieve that. What we do in the community, obviously volunteer patrols during the summer period. We help to facilitate the beach wheelchairs and beach access maps that has been helped and supplied by the City Council and the North Beach Residents Association. Our junior club, which we provide friendly or inclusive learning environment to our future lifeguards. And we are the only current activated search and rescue team between Waimari Beach and South Brighton. There is a Sumner and Taylor's team. So we get called out to multiple incidents, usually after hours and during the winter for flooding and things like that as well. Searches and all sorts of interesting things, along with police call out for assisting them with some water activities when they need it. We also provide lifeguarding services to external water events throughout Christchurch. This is all done by volunteers, obviously. We don't have any paid employees in our club. So. The current issues, as I said before, the building was constructed in the 60s, so it's around 65 years old, and is definitely feeling the effects of standing in our wonderful local nor'east wind. It currently lies between 50 and 67% of the standard. We require a substantial investment to repair this. Currently has concrete spalling, which means parts of the concrete are falling away, and that's due to the rusting metal reinforcing expanding inside the walls and cracking the external and internal walls. So, few issues that we need to address. And currently the building is undersized for our current and rising membership levels. The fix is obviously to demolish and rebuild. Some of you may not know, we've got two buildings there. We've got a small, sort of probably call it to a double garage sized to the north end of the beach. Where we house our IRBs, which is our inflatable rescue boats, and all the equipment for those. As I said, a two-stage process. The first stage is obviously to demolish that smaller shed, rebuild a slightly larger shed, which will include a patrol tower and lifeguard facilities. The second stage will be after the construction of the first one. We demo the existing club and rebuild this. It's been decided to do this to enable the club to raise the funds for both for the projects, and as well as not interrupt The safe patrolling of the beaches, so obviously a lot of clubs have been rebuilt and we've learned and talked to them a lot, and it was hard on their lifeguards when they had to be in portacoms on the beaches and with no air conditioning and pretty closed up. It's not fun for them, and they lost lots of members during those times, so trying to avoid that situation from happening. So at the moment we've got resource consent is currently being sought with the council, along with ECAN approval. It hasn't been submitted yet. It's almost close. I think Jason talked about that too. So hopefully we get that roughly in June. We've got funding applications. Obviously we can't do anything until we've got building consent as well, and engineering and all that sort of stuff done. But we hope to get stage 1 sort of started by the end of patrol season, which is next year, mid-March next year. Stage 2 would be pretty much the year after. And once we've got it fully constructed on the first building, we can still patrol out of that one and then demolish the other one. Engagement we've already undertaken. We've engaged with our members, Surf Life Saving New Zealand, which is supporting us 100%. And the local community, we've started talking to everyone. Everyone's heard about it. They've all been asking us when are we getting a new surf club here. It's definitely on its last legs, but we've got a lot of support from our local community. So confirmation of funding, we've got a bit of a estimated build cost there, which was given to us by one of our club members as an estimator. He gave us a rough idea of what it's cost up there. That was back in 2022, so obviously those costs have gone up. We currently have approached Surf Life Saving New Zealand, who get a government grant, government assistance, and they have, which helps us put equipment on the beach for lifeguarding services. And they're obviously going to got funding there that is available for us to help with rebuilds and maintenance throughout. So they've indicated to us that they've got a bit of a surplus at the moment, which is going to need to be used in the next 1 to 2 years. And it's pretty confident that they'll give us quite a large amount of that. So we still have to do funding through lotteries, commissions, or other places like that, and along with club fundraising and lots of sausage tools, I suppose. But yeah. Obviously, just a request from the board. We're just looking for support from the community board and as well as our community. For the following reasons, we're going to obviously continue with safe patrolling of North Beach, add assets to which local community groups can use. We already have 2 or 3 small groups that use our facilities. We don't charge them. They just give a cohort to us. But we don't actively ask them for anything. We like to see our building being used rather than just sit there dormant, which it does most winter. So we like people using it. We want to help improve our club as we continue to build our membership base. North Beach is the only current location that has it. Accessibility mats and beach wheelchairs in Canterbury. There's obviously more looking into it. I've heard through at Scarborough, which is great. North Beach Residents Association alongside us help facilitate that. We put the mats out and we're on patrol, and also organise when people book wheelchairs. They come down the weekend to assist people with wheelchairs to use those beach chairs and also assist them out in the water as well, which is great. Obviously, over the last 9 years, the local community has grown in size. Keep growing. We've got more large building complexes built along Marine Parade in the surrounding suburbs, and the addition of North Beach Coffee Shed, which was it's a fantastic community feel now down at North Beach. People just hang out there all day. It's great to see. So good community feel. There's a few pictures here. We've got some of you have seen the plans. But we've got those available to anyone that would like to have a look.
We've got them.
Yeah, you've got them. Okay, absolutely. So that's pretty much the view from Marine Parade. The north left-hand side building is the patrolling area with the sheds for the IRBs and all that sort of lifeguarding equipment. And the right-hand side is the club, which stores a lot of gear and equipment as well, so as well as an area upstairs. Just a couple more pictures there, what it's gonna hopefully look like. And that's the south end looking with, I'm sure Jason will talk more about this. We've sort of had chats about including a changing rooms and public toilets into our building. And that's to try and tidy them up a bit and keep it a nicer sort of facility to use, because they're currently open air changing rooms, two separate and large, which is, you know, most councillors are looking to get away from. But closed, sort of nicely protected and, you know, family safe. So, so thanks for your time, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to chuck your hands up and throw them at me. I'll hopefully be able to answer them for you.
Kelly, Yanni, please.
Thanks for that. That's really interesting. Good luck with it. I'm just interested, have you talked to the other surplus, like obviously has that been useful?
Yes, definitely. Spence Park was our first port of call. They gave us a lot of information. New Brighton, I know the guys there as well, and they told us what good things and bad things, and how to try and make it a lot easier for ourselves. The South Brighton guys were really good with information as well. So everyone's been very helpful, some as well.
Just for members, so these are just questions for, I'm sorry, I've got a name, Dean.
Yeah.
For Dean, and then will be a presentation from staff and then questions from staff. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey Dean, thanks for the good work that you're doing. It's really cool to see the rise in membership. I was just wondering, have you guys thought much about traffic planning and car parking? Because I'm just looking at the existing stuff, and then I'm looking at your photos, and obviously there's no freedom campers in the photos. But I'm just wondering if there's anything that you've identified where really could be of benefit in terms of redesigning the car parking or the cycleway or the pedestrian way to just get a better outcome.
Yep. So we did look at initially including, because there was talks of walkways along the sand dunes and things like that. So we sort of left it in the plans. Our designer has left it available to be able to try and incorporate those walkways into that.
I'll speak to that in a little bit more detail to the submission, but yes, the club did initially propose a change in the car parking layout and went through our roading and through the resource consent process. The club didn't have funding to make that change. The transportation team also doesn't currently have funding to make those changes, so the changes shown on the plan is currently shown, but we are aware of through the notice of motion that there is some work going on in the background around some design, which I don't believe there's any budget for at the moment, but we are aware of the issue, and I believe it is being looked at in detail by our roading team and our roading engineers currently.
Well, good thing we're in the budget process at the moment, so we do need extra budget, but I think from my understanding is council has asked, the board has asked to look at this stretch further down, because we're doing a lot of work just right up to the boundary, Bogle and Maroon Grey, and the next area there's been no planning. So I'm just really supportive if there's things that we can do to just know as soon as possible, so that we can get through the trying to get some budget for it, because it's maybe a lost opportunity if we couldn't do that.
This
Looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Really exciting. And the design is really, I love how you're using the stone and things, so.
Yeah, it's definitely
very
using
Yeah.
the stone wall there. And that's obviously going to protect our
Yeah.
building for the next 20+ years, so we
Yeah.
need to incorporate it. And
I have two questions. One was, do you have any sense of what the shortfall will be funding, or is it too early to say?
to
Yeah.
really say. So as I said, Streetlights Over New Zealand is indicated
Yeah.
funds there for us. They just can't say
Yeah.
much at this stage. But yeah, it should get us.
Great.
significant way.
Really positive.
Yeah.
And if there's anything the board can do to support that, then it's time to put in your applications for various, let us know. The second one was, it's really just an update to say you'll be aware we've put forward a notice of motion around the parking.
Yeah.
And part of that request included a request on budget options, because there may be some money left over on the craft side of things that may not be able to be applied, but we're getting advice. And there may be some other pots. So it'd be good to, I'm sure this is already happening and it'll probably be picked up in your presentation, but looking at integrating the feedback that's already been given into any potential advice that we get, so that we can make sure that we're future-proofing it, because we want to make sure that, particularly your garage area, I know you've got lots of problems at the moment, so we want to get that sorted as soon as possible.
All right, well, yeah, thank you very much, Dean. And we'll move on to Jason now.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay at the table if you like. Yep. Thank you very much. I think you're very supportive as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. So the application was received late last year by the Parks team, and fundamentally it involves, as Dean's described, the first stage rebuilding the storage shed and patrol towers, second stage with the rebuild of the club rooms, and the council's public toilet is currently attached, and changing rooms are currently attached to the club. There's also the relocation of the coffee trailer, which is under an existing council licence. There will be some changes to the car parking to make the changes to the club work, as well as the removal of the storage container in that car park, which currently houses the accessible wheelchair. And some alterations to the dune and restoration works, which are all those plans that were distributed before this meeting. And the community board obviously have delegation to make the decisions on those changes on the park, as well as there'll be a corresponding lease that will sit with the changes to the club will release over the park as part of the application process. So, sorry, wrong button. This is the club's plans, and the blue lines you can see there is the current building footprint, and then you can see the proposed storage shed on the left-hand side, and the little, what looks like a parking bay is a washdown area to the left against the dune, and then on the right you've got the proposed building, so that gives you a good understanding of the actual scale compared to the existing scale. Here's another overlay which will be of particular relevance at the moment. The area that is hashed in red is the current lease or licence for the coffee cart, and you can see the proposal is to move that into the area in yellow, which is outside of the car parking area, which is just on the reserve, on the parkland, sorry. And those areas in red are currently potential loss of car parking for the club to facilitate that change in layout for their storage shed. So it's definitely something that is up for engagement and further conversation. And I can quickly touch on the car parking work. Our traffic engineers are currently drafting up proposals for this area, and they have a copy of these full plans for the Surf Lifesaving Club to make sure that those plans, we don't want them also not working with each other. Unfortunately, they're at that early stage where they're not at a point where we provide pricing at this stage or detailed design due to matters around stormwater, etc. But that is all in the process. So we're currently aware of that, and we're working as quick as we can to try to alleviate that. To hopefully, and as the parks planner, hopefully we can make sure that the timing works. So we're doing the same things at the same time. Nothing worse than you shut a site down for 2 years for a club to rebuild, and then we come in the next day and start rebuilding the car park. We don't look that competent when we do that. So I'm very keen to work very closely with our road and design and make sure we can try to find the funding together with this community board. Again, this was the impression that Dean showed from the opposite side of the road, showing the scale and the materials. The other thing that the club have done through the resource consenting process is actually provide a lot of visualizations from those neighbouring properties, which has actually been really helpful. So this one is one of probably around 6 of those visualization. Sorry, artist impressions. Thank God. And yeah, they're very helpful. So they're through that documentation that's already been forwarded to the board. And here again, you have the proposed change to the dune environment, which there is some work to somewhat relocate or reshape that dune to make enough space for that storage patrol shed and provide some additional protection around that coastal side and their landscaping plan. And you've got all this information as part of the pre-distributed information. One thing that will remain council ownership and management will be the toilet block. Now, this is the current iteration, but there is further iterations that will be done as we get closer to approval and building consent. But fundamentally, we're thinking of 3 fully accessible changing rooms that are able to be used for changing, and as well as using the toilet and some showers, which currently shown as coin operated, but we won't have them as coin operated. They'll be.
That's my question too.
Yeah. So we picked up on that. So those will remain in council ownership. Council will be paying through our renewal funding for the work to be done in that internal layout, but the club will be building the framing around it because they require that for their building above. So currently we're midway in the process. The application's been received and we've gone back and forth on the further information. Following this information session, with your blessing, we'll be going out for an engagement process with the wider community. Once we get that feedback from them and any change that's going things go smoothly, we'll be bringing it back to seek a decision from this board. One key thing is that there will be the resource consent processes under the RMA running concurrently with that. We're not involved in that as much as parks planners. It's obviously through our RMA and planning team. There is 2 consents as part of that as well. One is the land use consent with our council, which I believe is well progressed and at a point of a decision being made by an independent commissioner. And then there was the resource consent from ECAM, which Dean mentioned, which my understanding is due to be launched imminently with ECAM. So that process to ensure that they can meet those timeframes, the club that is, to gain funding, and they've proposed to do those concurrently with this process. The key issues I see is the planner involved is maintaining that surf life saving service to the community, both during the construction and long term. There is an impact on the sand dunes we're aware of. That's going to be an issue that may or may not come up from the community. Impact on view shafts and neighbours. I'm well aware that some of the residents across the road may have strong views on this. We've found this in other applications in coastal environments. So that is one thing we are cognizant of. The car parking operations, again, completely aware of the issues that have been highlighted by this board in that area, and we're aware that those are likely to come up through the consultation, and we believe we are working on solutions at the moment for that. Changes to the public toilets and park, that's always something people love our parks and open spaces. So resource consenting, as I've discussed, there is always a risk with resource consenting of those delaying or being declined. I've had good conversations with the applicant's planner, and they are relatively confident. So we wouldn't bring it to the board if we didn't believe there was some level of certainty that that was going to go with a level of certainty. Coastal inundation and adaptation is always a consideration in these environments, but from my view, a surf club has to go. It's kind of unavoidable. So, and the district plan also has objectives and policies. So, and the relocation of the coffee cart that may be raised by the community. So engagement, I'll pass you to Claire. All right, speak to this.
We've only got a couple of minutes, I'm afraid.
I'll speak through it. So you can pretty much take it as read on the slide there, but we'll be letterbox dropping to directly adjacent properties who have the club in its view. and then one other street, Levers Street, one block back, which would also have it in their view. Use all of the other normal techniques that we use, social media, direct contact with our residents associations, advertising in the local paper, all to understand any concerns or any feedback prior to you as a board making a decision on the lease and the build, approving the part that you can on the build. Any information that's gathered in relation to other parts that we can't have an influence in will be passing back to, well, I assume will be passing back to the relevant teams within the council that may need to understand that information. And reporting that back to the club as well.
We have a short question from Greg.
Can one option be to have information shared next to the coffee cart? It's a pretty popular place.
Yeah, I may have used it myself previously, catching up with friends on this side of town. So I was just thinking that prior to coming, that we should probably ask to have some information there. So maybe some of the flyers. There'll also be signage outside the club, like large signage showing the plans. And into other locations.
Signage.
Sharing that people can put their say until the 12th of May. And to have a look at the plans online as well.
Because we've got a community board meeting starting in 5 minutes and staff need time to get ready, we need to draw it to close now. So no come to questions, I'm afraid, but before that, you're happy to be contacted if the members, well, via Cindy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions?
Yeah, fire them through to Cindy and I'll answer them.
Right, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.